So, last night after the UFC, I said that I would make a video about why I'm so critical um, about sparring, why I think sparring should always be supervised, and also why I think the lack of sparring benefited Max Holloway in what was a career best performance. Firstly, we should look at Max's performance and just say that I think we saw something really very special. I think we're unlikely to ever see Max perform so well again. Possibly not see anyone perform so well in the UFC for quite a long time, to be fair. The performance was just perfect. As perfect as you could want any striking performance in any combat sport to go, really. It was absolute dominance, and I scored the fight personally 50-41 because I had Max 4-10-8 rounds and maybe a 10-9 in the last round, just because Max wasn't as dominant. He didn't impose himself so much in the final round. So I scored that one a 10-9. Other than that, if I would have been the coach, I'd have pulled Cater at the end of 4 and I wouldn't let him go out for 5 with the state of his nose and stuff. I would have spoke to him at the end of 3 and I'd have said, look, we're 3 down here convincingly. You show me something this round. Show me something that makes me not pull the plug here. Your nose is in a really bad way and you're taking some damage. And he would have been going out to round 4 thinking, I need to show these guys something. Or I would have pulled him for a 5, definitely. That would have been my logic. I understand why they didn't. I understand why he wouldn't want to get pulled, because he's thinking at any time he can land that big shot. And of course he's game. So it makes sense. Personally, as a coach, I would have pulled him at the end of 4. So I scored it 50-41, which might be harsh, but that's the way that I scored it. Now, it was said during the fight that Max had dropped his sparring right off, was doing no sparring. I don't believe he was doing no sparring. I think he'd be foolish to believe that. I think he'd wound his sparring right back and was now sparring really light and technically. I do believe that much. I didn't watch the fight with any volume on, but I was talking to some guys on a WhatsApp group and I was giving my opinion of how the fight was going, and they were saying that the commentator said that there was no sparring. So I listened to that today. And last night I said I'd give opinions. So, okay, let's address what my opinions are of sparring. Firstly, let's have a look at this from the place that I'm least qualified, okay? And that's from a medical point of view. Let's approach this on damage. CTE, brain damage. Hard sparring is the worst element of any combat sport for that. There's no two ways about it. Getting punched in the head, kicked in the head, kneed in the head, that's going to be the worst factor for brain damage. We know that brain damage exists. We know that it is ending careers and having severe long-term effects for all kinds of athletes who take head trauma, but specifically combat sports. Now, if we continue to train the way that we have been for 25, 30 years, we are idiots. It's that simple. That's not to say that the people 25, 30 years ago were idiots. They weren't idiots. They just didn't have the knowledge that we have. The reason we have the knowledge that we do now, science has moved on, study has moved on, and we've managed to look at these things more. So for all of those elements to have moved on and to be given us information that we can utilize and improve what we do, for us not to do that, we're idiots. It's that simple. We have all the information that's telling us, look, this is killing people. This is the long-term effects of early onset dementia, CTE. All of these things are real. We can study it, we're testing it, and we can see it happen. For us not to stand up and take note at this point, we are idiots, especially seeing as 99% of us are never going to make a life-changing amount of money, or it's not going to be a life-changing career for 99% of us. You're stupid to carry on doing this and to make hard sparring and head trauma a big part of your experience. On fight night, it's a different matter. If you're going to step in the cage or in the boxing ring, you understand what the game is. You understand that you're there for a fight and you go to fight. It's that simple. But the way we train and the way we approach getting there is the big issue. So that's the medical point. I have absolutely no qualifications to give you any diagnosis. So that's why we're leaving that, really, because I've given my opinion on it based on the experience and the knowledge that I do have. So let's go for my credentials for why I can talk about the sparring side, the training, the fighting, the physical, and the way that benefits your game. 25 MMA fights, boxing bouts, Muay Thai fights, fought all over the world, trained with some of the biggest gyms in the world, some of the biggest names in the world, sparred with them, technical drills, etc. 20 years as a coach, professional fighters, amateur fighters, boxers, Muay Thai fighters. So my credentials within the sport, I think, allow me or leave me in a position that I can at least critique or at least offer an idea of this situation, basically. So, okay, let's have a look at the reasons that we spar hard, okay? So, hard sparring has been seen as a fundamental part of combat sports, boxing, etc., for a long time. You quite often hear people say, oh, you need that hard sparring for your timing and for toughness, and you need it, it's a part of the game. So let's dispel that quickly. Hard sparring, I'm going to agree to some extent, can be a benefit. But the benefit is very, very small, and the negative impact is huge. Not just in physical damage. Lots of people don't make it to fights because of damage they take in sparring. Broken orbitals, broken noses, cut eyes. I've seen it happen lots. Now, I'm not preaching here. I've seen people knocked out in my gym. I've seen people dropped in my gym. I've dropped people in my gym. I know that people spar too hard. I've sparred too hard. I've hit people and it's cost them going to a fight the next week, and I've been hit hard enough that I haven't been able to fight. I've got cut or something. So it's not me preaching a holier than thou view. It's my experience. I've been there. I've done it. I've seen it. So let's have a look at what the perceived benefits are. The toughness. Well, if you're going to enter into any combat sport, boxing, MMA, etc., and you're relying on hard sparring to give you the toughness to be a fighter, this sport is not for you. It's quite simple. Cater stayed in that bout last night simply because he is tough as nails. There's no way he has ever been involved in any sparring situation that simulated what he went through last night. It wouldn't happen. You wouldn't be in such a one-sided sparring session. So he hasn't been there. That's not what made him tough. He's mentally and physically a very tough human being. There's no quitting him, and he was not going to quit last night, which is why the onus becomes on the trainer or the coach. So your mental toughness, if you're relying on that, getting that from sparring, you're already in the wrong sport. It's give up now. You're stupid. It's not going to happen. That's the worst argument I've heard. We need to spar for toughness. We need to spar for our timing and to get our techniques and practice the stuff we drill. Okay, I can buy into this a little. It is nice to be in a big, full-on spar, 90% sparring, and pull off a technique. I'll agree. That is very good. It's very nice. You feel like you're doing things right. However, let me explain why I believe that holds you back. When you start sparring hard, and when you're drawn into one of these hard sparring fights, you take away some of the fundamental elements of progression. So, let's say we've been working on a technique, a spinning back kick, a spinning back fist, a 6-punch combination that's finished off with a leg kick. Let's say we've been working on that, okay? We work it at a certain pace and at a certain rhythm on the pads. We then work it at the same pace and at the same rhythm in a Dutch drill, let's say, with a partner. In order for that to work in training, we need to emulate that same speed, the pattern, the pace, the rhythm. It needs to be the same. The moment we change the pace or the rhythm, the technique's different. The movement's different. The reaction from my partner will be different. If I work on an entry with a pad man at a certain speed, if I enter like that against an opponent who responds according to my speed, then it works well. If I enter harder or faster and he responds harder and faster, that changes the rhythm, it changes the pattern, and we end up with the technique not quite being there. So the hard sparring now already is having a detrimental effect on what we've been drilling for so long. Because the moment I start to up my game and implement my hard sparring technique on you, you have to respond. You either respond with a suitably hard technique or aggressive technique, which stops me, slows me down, or makes me think about changing the way that I'm doing things, or you run away. You get out of the way of it. You don't play the game of being hit really hard. So if you do buy into it and we do exchange really hard, next minute we're in this brawl. Well, that's not the way we've been hitting pads. That's not the way we've been drilling our technique. So this brawl is now not only damaging to our brain, we're getting punched more, kicked more, damaging to our body as well as our brain. It's not only that, which is a really bad factor anyway. It's now detrimental to our technique because it's not what we've been drilling. It's not the way that we've been training. It's taken away not only the technique itself, the rhythm, the speed, the footwork, the momentum. When all those elements are gone, you are simply left with the basics. I can throw punches and I can throw kicks. Which ones you land is going to come simply down to who stood where, in what position and at what time. You haven't prepared for this brawl and this other person you meet and you bash heads together. That's not what you've prepared for, because there'd be no point in any of us trying to progress. We would all just go back to hitting heavy bags as hard as we can. So I know that this isn't the way that you've prepared, and I know that this isn't the way that my students have prepared. So now we come on to why I believe sparring should always be supervised. So all of us are affected by an ego. So when we spar, we have the ego. When someone hits me hard, I'm going to hit them hard back. That's, you're not going to, what? He just hit me. No, I'll clip him. Or he just for a head kick in it, I'm going to hit him with a head kick. And everyone gets that. That's just part of being a fighter. You hit me hard, I'm hitting you hard. You shoot a double leg on me, I'm shooting a double leg on you. That's part of the game. That's what happens, okay? And many years ago, myself and Paul Reed, when I first started Olympians, we trained together a lot, all the time. And Paul used to say to me, don't spar until I get there. And he used to get to me. He said, why do I need him there to see me spar? I can spar. I don't need you to watch me spar. What, do you think I'm not doing it properly? And the ego got the better of me. And then one day he said to me, I'm not worried about it. I'm worried because I know you. If you get clipped, you are going to clip someone back. If you get hit hard, you are going to bite your gum shut and you're going to be in a fight. He said, because I know you. He said, so when I'm there, I'll stop that before it gets to that point. I'll stop it. I'll see the other person, or I'll see you make a change, and I'll stop that, and we'll keep the spar, and we'll spar the things we've been working on. Otherwise, there's no point in us working on something. And conversely, when Paul would have a fight coming up, I would do the same. I would watch. So off the back of that, it makes you assess the way that you coach. So the reason that you should always have a coach there is, when you spar, you have a game plan that you've been working on. I, as a coach, am going to watch. You may think that as a fighter, you know best. I know what to do. No, I don't need it. I know I'm working on this technique and I did it. I'm going to look at where your feet are positioned. How did you set that up? When did you set that up? Did you land this really good technique that we've been working because the guy came on to you, but we've been working it as an attacking technique? You didn't land it once as an attacking technique, but you landed it twice as a defensive technique. Should we now change that and adapt it, or do we need to adapt you and figure out how we can make this an attacking technique now? All of these elements are stuff that I'm watching the whole time you're sparring. You are not watching them. No matter how alert you think you aren't watching them. You're watching what the other guy's putting on your face. You're watching how he's moving. It's up to me as a coach to assess all those things. At the same time, I need to moderate. Have you just been hit? Why are you not landing this? Has the spar ramped up a little bit? Do I need to interject? So let's say I've got a guy who has got a really big right hand or a massive left hook. They're power punchers. We know we can rely on one of those punches. They can knock someone out. When we come to the gym, that will be the last thing that I work on. If you come to the gym and we start sparring and I see you start trying to land that right hand, I'm going to stop the spar. I'll call you to one side. Okay, why don't we work on this? You're not allowed to throw your right hand at all. For this round, you're only allowed to jab and throw a left hook. That's all you're allowed to work on. I want to see you stepping off to the right, using that head movement, and I want to see a minimum of 2 jabs every time you punch. Minimum 2 jabs. Get that left hook out there as well. I'm going to go to your opponent. I'm going to say, I want you to avoid the left. Don't get hit with jabs. Don't get hit with that big left hook. Circle to the right a little bit. Draw him on. Make it hard for him to use that left hand. And we're going to develop those elements that you don't rely on. We're going to develop the elements that we work on when you hit the pads. Then when it comes to fight night, you've still got this big right hand. I'm not taking that away from you as a coach. I'm not telling you not to rely on that. You have this. We have this and we've always had it. It's there for us. That's our banker, we've got this. What we also have now is a really good jab and a nice left hook. But what we have on top of all of those things is the experience of using it in sparring, the timing of using it in sparring, and the frequency. So all the practice that we have of using this left hand now, which we weren't using because we were getting drawn into brawls even when we sparred, and we were relying on hitting people with this right hand because it gave us that bit of breathing space because people don't like getting hit hard. We now have all this stuff that we've worked for weeks with this left hand. As a coach, that's my job. That's my role. As a fighter, your role should be to trust in what that coach is saying to you. Now, the greatest fighter in the world will benefit from having a mediocre coach. They will. No matter how good a fighter you are, if you've got a mediocre coach who understands the game and they're sort of okay and they know what it is that you want to achieve, they will be a benefit. If they're not trying to change you, they'll be a benefit. A crap fighter will benefit massively from having a mediocre coach. And a crap fighter will benefit even better from having a really good coach. You can progress slowly with having no coach, but why would you? All the benefits are saying you've got a coach. There's a coach there. There's someone who knows what your game plan is. You've been working with them. They've been holding pads for you. Why would you ignore that? You have a coach. You should use them and utilize them. If you don't have a coach who's seeing these things and making these changes and they're allowing your ego to inflate and just say, yeah, well, I've sparred 5 times this week and yeah, I feel ready because I've done loads of sparring. If you're not having a coach step in and say to you, hang on, what are you sparring? I need to see what you're sparring. I want to see the techniques that you're working on. If you don't have that, you don't have a coach. It's that simple. You don't have a coach if you don't have someone that's doing that for you. You have a pad man or you have a sparring partner. You don't have a coach. So that's why I believe that primarily and predominantly all sparring should be supervised. Now, let's address the fact that not sparring was the reason that Max got there last night, and not sparring is going to make everyone... Listen, I'm not dissing sparring. I'm an advocate of sparring. I just think we need to now understand what developmental sparring is. How we dedicate our lives to this sport to get better. We eat right. We get our weight down to be as good as we can. We eliminate drugs and alcohol for the most part. We get to bed early. We do all the things that we can. We go and we hit pads with a pad man and we use another person for doing Dutch drills. And then we go and have a sparring session behind closed doors without your coach, or we go and have a sparring session even with your coach working and we have a brawl. Max Holloway last night was a perfect example of if we take away that one element of hard sparring, how A, it had no detrimental effect, but B, it had a real positive effect. It allowed Max last night to fight freely, openly. And don't get me wrong, Max can do that because he has a career, a lifelong dedication to mixed martial arts. Max has worked this craft for many years, many fights under his belt and many, many hours in the gym. However, the one benefit we saw last night was Max moved like he moves when he hits pads, when he's shadow boxing. Max moves like he didn't have to think about what Cater was doing because he was dictating everything. Everything was working exactly how Max Holloway trains, prepares. That can only happen if you continue to train and prepare the way that you want to perform. So by going and having these big, hard brawls where people are losing brain cells, getting injured, holding you back, you are not only just affecting the mental and the physical, you're also affecting your timing, your reach, your speed, your accuracy, the way that you counter shots. It's not just a case of, if I don't spar hard, I won't land this right hand. It's a case of, by not sparring hard or by taking the sparring back, you're going to develop all the other tiny little bits that make it possible to finish someone with that big right hand. All the little incremental steps that it takes to throw one really good technique. So by winding that back, listening to a coach, having someone watch what you do, the benefits, I believe, were reflected hugely in what is a career, if not maybe one of the best performances in UFC history was witnessed last night. And as a coach, that's my take on why.